Explaining the Bay of Pigs invasion. The Cuban Revolution would see President Fulgencio Batista removed from power by Fidel Castro. Despite this, Fidel Castro would only become the head of the army after the revolution. Manuel Urrutia Leo instead became the president of Cuba. Jose Miro Cardona would become prime minister. Miro would quickly resign, and Fidel Castro would come into power as prime minister. Castro would then go on a tour of many countries in the Americas, and in 1959 would even visit the United States. Although he was not a communist, he began hiring communists, such as Che Guevara, into positions of power. This would anger President Urrutia. Because of this, the two would have a falling out, and in July of 1959, Fidel Castro would resign from being prime minister. This would cause thousands of Castro's supporters to demand that Urrutia resign. He would end up resigning, and Fidel Castro would become prime minister once again. Fidel would still not become president of Cuba, and instead, Osvaldo Dorticos Torrado would become president. Dorticos happened to be a communist. Despite being only prime minister, Castro would largely run the country, while Dorticos was sort of a figurehead. Now in power, Castro began to introduce policies and build things like schools, hospitals, and houses. Although this was good, he began to nationalize many businesses and began to seize land from large U.S. companies. This angered the U.S. government, along with the Mafia and the United Fruit Company, which had a large influence inside of Central America. Castro would also begin killing political opponents, banning political parties, and censoring the media. Many Batista supporters, along with some of Castro's old allies, who were dissatisfied with his undemocratic policies, would begin to join the Escambre Rebellion. They would carry out raids from their mountain base and would quickly find allies in the Dominican Republic and the United States. Finally, President Eisenhower of the United States would declare Fidel Castro a communist and would demand that the CIA remove him from power. The CIA had seen success in removing people from power in the past, such as Guatemala in 1954, but their assassination attempts would all fail. Their embargoes on Cuban sugar also wouldn't work, which began when Cuba would nationalize their oil companies. Relations would grow worse when a Belgian vessel carrying Belgian weapons would explode in Havana port in 1960. Castro had been importing weapons from other countries to expand his army and to fight rebels, and would blame the U.S. for the explosion. During a United Nations meeting inside of New York, Fidel Castro would meet with Soviet leader Khrushchev and Malcolm X. With the meeting between Fidel Castro and Soviet leader Khrushchev, the United States now believed that Cuba was ready to become a Soviet ally. Because of this, Eisenhower would approve a plan to invade Cuba. Eisenhower wanted to conceal the U.S.'s involvement in the invasion, so they would begin to train Cuban refugees inside of Florida. These people had fled Cuba to avoid political persecution. Throughout 1960, around 1,500 Cuban refugees would be trained by the U.S. military, and the United States would acquire ships and planes which could not be tracked back to them. They hoped that this force, made up entirely of Cubans, would stop the Soviets from getting involved, and would inspire other Cuban rebellions. In 1960, there would be an election, and President John F. Kennedy would be elected, who would quickly enact the invasion. Former Cuban Prime Minister Miro would be made head of the Cuban Revolutionary Committee, and the Cuban force would be moved to Nicaragua so that they could quickly enact the invasion. In mid-April, the bombers would attempt to destroy the Cuban Air Force, but the Cubans had learned of the invasion previously, and this attack would do almost nothing. The invasion would begin on the 16th of April, when a small force was sent to Bahia Honda as a diversion. The next day, on the 17th, the rest of the troops would land at the Bay of Pigs. Sadly for the invasion force, they would immediately come under fire, and the Cuban Air Force would destroy ships carrying medical supplies and ammunition. The Bay of Pigs overall was a poor landing place. The CIA originally wanted to land at Trinidad, which had a small port and was close to the Escambre Rebellion. Instead, the Bay of Pigs was chosen, which was mainly a swampy area with a radio station where Fidel Castro could be informed of the invasion. Being informed quickly, Castro would quickly mobilize an army of 25,000 Cuban soldiers. The Cuban soldiers would make it to the Bay of Pigs and, within mere days, would defeat the now poorly equipped invasion force. Most of the exiles were captured, and the United States would not be able to hide their involvement in the invasion. In conclusion, the Bay of Pigs invasion was a horrible failure for the United States and was an attempt at getting rid of Fidel Castro. The CIA would continue to attempt to assassinate Fidel Castro throughout the years, but all of their attempts would fail. Also, because of the invasion, Fidel Castro would form a sense of insecurity and would form an alliance with the USSR, which would eventually lead to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank you for watching this video on the Bay of Pigs invasion.